take a few minutes to sit back and remind ourselves of the absolutely awesome first season and where we are to this point with Andor. Enjoy.
There is a wound that won't heal. At the center of the galaxy, we let it grow, and now it's here.
Cassian Andor, I came for you.
How do you know about me?
The Empire has been choking us. No matter what you tell me or tell yourself, you'll ultimately die fighting these bastards. I need all the heroes I can get.
The Empire is a disease that thrives in darkness.
We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs, whether they arise from within or have come from the outside.
Freedom, independence, justice.
He's writing a manifesto.
We've chosen a side. We're fighting against the dark.
There is an organized rebel effort. Drill down and get a hunt started.
It's just getting very dangerous. I'd be the first one to fall. No one's more at risk than I am.
The time has come to force their hand.
This is what revolution looks like.
Hang on!
Nemik's manifesto. He said to give this to you.
The pace of oppression outstrips our ability to understand it.
6 years.
I'm just a tourist!
But they have a fight on their hands.
They're afraid. Right now, they're afraid. Every day we wait, they get stronger. Somebody's got to tell people what's happening down there.
Your investment in the rebellion is epic.
What do you sacrifice?
I made my mind a sunless place. I share my dreams with ghosts.
I'd rather die trying to take them down than die giving them what they want.
There will be no rules going forward.
For the greater good.
Call it what you will.
Let's call it war.
Cass, I'm sorry. Your mother's dead.
A funeral.
She's our bait.
If I could do it over again, I'd wake up early and be fighting these bastards from the start. Fight the Empire!
You're in and not coming.
Cassian will find us.
I will. I'll find you.
Every hair on my body with excitement. Are you ready to welcome our panel? Yeah? Please put your hands together. First up, the creator and executive producer, Tony Gilroy. Executive producer and president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy. Executive producer, Cassian Andor himself, Diego Luna. Co-producer and editor, please put your hands together for John Gilroy. Production designer, Luke Hull. Costume designer, Michael Wilkinson. And last, but certainly by no means least, composer, the wonderful Nicholas Britell. thank you so much for being here. It's so great to have you all. What an amazing response from this beautiful audience. Kathleen and Tony, I'm going to start with you two, if that's okay first. To kind of go back, really, if you don't mind, to how Andor came to be, what those early conversations and kind of pitch conversations were as to what this could be.
Well, the early pitch conversation was, I said to Tony, we had such an amazing experience getting Rogue One finished. Would you consider doing a series? And he said, no. But that very quickly turned around. You want to talk about it, Tony?
It wasn't so quick, but I mean, you know what? It really was, how far can you go?
Yeah.
What can you do? How can we break a new lane? How can we open a new pathway into the frontier that other people can follow? What can we do? And how bold are you willing to go? And how, you know, it's a very big gamble on everybody's part. It's a gamble for all the people up here on their time and their commitment. It's a gamble for Kathy on all the levels that are obvious, and it's a gamble for Disney on, you know, on many, many complicated levels. It's a big risk.
I like to think you took that line, no rules going forward, basically, as your kind of mantra really into
Yeah, I think that's
it.
very true, and I think what Tony's saying is true for Star Wars. It's true for the fans. We knew that we were branching out into something that didn't necessarily look or feel like anything that had come before, and that's scary. But I gotta say, being in the hands of somebody who writes so impeccably like Tony, the characters and the story were just undeniable. Undeniable.
Yeah. Diego, for you, hi.
Hi, hello. Hey.
There we go.
One way out. Look at that. Here's the costume designer of what you're wearing is here. He saw a picture and you approved, right?
Approved, 100%.
Amazing.
Most of them came without shoes on at the train station as well. That's the commitment.
That
is the commitment.
There's another word for that, but
I'm so sorry. To be honest, when it wasn't a wide shot, I was wearing sneakers.
Shh, no spoilers.
Yes.
This character, this writing, this opportunity to delve back into the world of this character. What was it about him, about Cassian, that you did want to jump back in and have the opportunity to explore him?
I think what was really interesting is the opportunity to have a show and and tell a story in a long format that happened to be about a regular guy. You know, they don't get movies done about themselves, you know? Like there's normally the hero is not just a simple guy like you know? And this was a great opportunity to do that in this amazing universe. But the other thing that I believe was important is like to celebrate what Rogue One meant, you know? With Rogue One, it was the first time that something like that came out in the world of Star Wars. It had a beginning and an end, such a definitive end.
Yeah.
Also, you know, risky and the audience, you celebrated that film, and it was important to keep doing and keep taking risks, I think, you know, and we had the great opportunity to be led by Tony, who is just like always trying to find a way to complicate things more and more, you know, in every possible way. Yes, we were very lucky because the great writing brings great people.
Yeah.
You know, the cast of our show is incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's money that could make that cast possible. That comes out of reading stuff, reading material you want to be part of.
Yeah. John, for you, in terms of, you know, the I don't know, the idea that you're involved in the production side of it as well as editing, do you almost kind of, do you get in there early with the kind of idea of what it's going to be like for you once you get into the edit suite? You know, are you almost a step ahead of the game?
You mean, do I have the idea ahead of time, or my job is to get the footage and to find the truth in that footage. So I'm seeing. I mean, I'm weighing in sometimes. Tony will consult me, but it's about getting the most out of what I'm given through all the product of everybody here.
And the collaboration, I imagine, is a hugely important aspect to the project.
I'm sorry, say
the collaboration with all the departments is such a big part of it.
I hardly ever see anybody. I'm in a little dark room, so everybody else is like they're making all this, but you know, it comes back to me, and it's sort of like the headquarters at Battle of Britain, like with the map, and like I kind of see whether we're winning or not, and I report back all the time.
I like that. Someone please let John out of his dark room every now and again, though.
I'm just going to, that is not entirely what he does. He's minimizing his involvement dramatically. He's not an editor, he builds films. And so we do all kinds of projects along the way. To make the show, we do all kinds of side projects and small previses and little movies that we make on videos and all kinds of things that we have to vet out and see how they work. And John is always the curator of that, and he's involved with everybody, and he's the builder. We build the show, and then he puts it together again.
I love that. The design of the film is extraordinary, both in terms of, you know, lovely to see that kind of, that real life response that you get from costumes that you create, but the production design on it as well. Were there, for both of you, was there any limitations when it came to that, when it was about, you know, creating lands or buildings or situations or characters through both the production design and costume design?
I mean, there's always limitations. So it's like you never have enough, you can never have enough time or money to fully achieve. You just run out of time.
Yeah.
So it was more that we were much more open, I guess, in our approach, led by Tony, to allow us to go there, to kind of rethink. Well, not even rethink, it's kind of like what Tony writes about pushes us in a direction that means we have to be moving through these worlds with characters. So it's less about scale and it's more about scope. And so it's just maybe a different way of looking at it than you would if you were doing a Star Wars movie previously.
And Michael, what about for you with regards to, you know, this character and almost kind of going in the reverse of where, you know, where we originally met him with regards to even just Cassian's costumes, but talk to me a little bit about the conversations that you had with regards to what was asked of you on this.
Before I answer your question, Eve, can I just say how pumped I am to be here today with all you guys? You can't imagine how it feels to see the love and the care that you guys put into recreating costumes that we've come up with for this show. It's just like, I will never forget this moment. But I've got that out of the way. And so thank you for caring.
Yes.
Thank you for caring about our characters. We love them just as much as you do. So going back to your question. So yeah, when I came on board, I didn't have a super overly familiar knowledge of the Star Wars universe. So I had a great, you know, deep dive into the 45 years of the history of Star Wars costuming. But when I read Tony's scripts and when I met with Tony, it was really apparent that it was going to take a very different type of costuming approach for this show. Tony's characters are so beautifully nuanced and very complicated and detailed, and that's gold to a costume designer. And so I had to sort of switch gears and go from a less of a sort of iconic big gesture approach to costuming and really deep dive into all those wonderful details of clothes that we all put into the way that we dress and that reflect who we are, all of our foibles and nuances. That all had to come out into the costumes for these characters. So we put lots of thinking about who they were, what their motivations were, how we could express that through the costumes, the silhouettes, the details, the textures, the colors, the palettes. So yeah, it was an incredible experience.
I think that that's one of the many things I love about the show is how the storyteller is not just told through character and performance, it's told through the set design, through the costumes, through even just movement, action, and none more so the music as well, Nicholas. I think that your storytelling through the score in this show is just extraordinary. Where was the starting point for you?
I would say, right, first off, how honored I am to be here as well. This is really incredible, really incredible. Very, very special for us. The starting point was, it was a few years ago. You know, I mean, we were really working on this. I was working on this with Tony very, very closely for about 2 years. And I remember, first of all, I was so honored to even be approached about this, having loved Star Wars from when I was such a, like, 3 years old, basically. But the first conversations were really amazing in the sense of the freedom and openness to explore new sound worlds, potentially, and to really figure out, like what you were just saying about the costumes, how can we be really specific to this story and these characters? What is it about this that feels a certain way? And the literal starting point was actually the on-camera music, because that had to be filmed, and we had to figure that out before we did anything. And so the actual first piece I remember writing was the funeral band. That was the first thing I remember playing for you, Tony. And from that moment, I think we felt like we had a sense of how things might feel. And then I think the really exciting thing was creating an architecture for saying to ourselves, oh, if this is how we could feel in episode 12, how can we then map it back to episode 1? And so there's this constant thread through the whole thing. And I think that's, for me with Andor, I think with everyone here, there was this constant sense of how everything connects and how everything ties together and where we're going. And I think that was, as a composer, I think that was really inspiring for me.
Did you know what you wanted? Did you have a clear idea of what you wanted sonically for the score for this, Tony?
No, it's very difficult. Some films, some stories, they just reveal themselves. Oh, it's going to be this kind of music, and you kind of and you temp something, and you sort of music is sticky to it. This is the elephant in the room is John Williams. There's this huge, gigantic, brilliant vocabulary this grammar that's already been described, and we're going to upend that. And boy, oh boy, we better have a good answer for what we're doing. We better be, since we're really going to try to dig for emotional reality all the way through. Our music really needs to be, it can never be cynical. It always has to be legit, and it has to feel like it belongs in Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's a very, it's also, I also say for Nick, we just completely underestimated what we were going to have to do. Totally, we're like, okay, I've scored a bunch of movies. I really thought I knew a lot about scoring. I really felt confident. I'd been a musician. I was like, man, I really got this down, and it's Nick Rattel, and here we go. And once we get our feet in it, and whatever, and I got Johnny and John Finkley helping us, it's all gonna go. Man, how many hours of music do we have?
It was about 7.5 hours of music.
7.5 hours of music.
And basically about every month, we were doing whole scoring sessions, recordings in London with an orchestra, and every month, so it felt like we were making movie after movie after movie, actually. And that was not what we thought. In the beginning, we thought it was going to be a big job, but it was an order of magnitude beyond what I thought.
We were really, I don't know if we were, if it's hubris or whether it's naivete, but it's one of the two. And so we were just staggered by what we had to do. But then I will say, look, there's 7 filmmakers up here. That's the key, right? Everybody here is a filmmaker. And there's a lot of other filmmakers that are behind us that aren't here today, that are back at Pinewood on Monday. There's so many, and that's the trick, man. You make everybody on the show a filmmaker, and you take every great idea, and you just keep going with it. And that's what you're seeing on stage here.
We want to talk about please, round of applause for that. It's a lovely sentiment and celebration of everyone. Going to talk about some specifics, and we begin in Ferrix, and it's an important location. Why, the overall approach to creating that place and what it signifies and what it means. What were you thinking when you wrote about that home?
Well, I needed him to be from, this is so bizarre, but my initial issue was I want to explain his accent. We did Rogue, and in Rogue I was like, oh, well, what's going on? And if we're going to be legit all the way through, and we're going to treat everything, so I need a story. So there was some apocryphal information, he was from Fest and whatever. And I go, oh, well, let me turn that upside down. Where is he from? And so start to think of this story, and what kind of place would he be from, and what are the skill sets that he has, and I don't know. People always say, where do you come up with, but Luke will tell you, there's a cocktail napkin drawing of Ferrix It was one of the first things that we traded with, with my version. It looks like one of those Tolkien maps in the front of the book.
Did you say on a napkin?
No, well, yeah, but it was like a piece of paper, a graph paper, and I kept doing it and doing it. And I said to Luke, I go, this is kind of like what it should be like. And like, it's kind of like that in a way. I mean, in the end, it kind of like all of a sudden Luke was like, wow, I was going to do this. And you watch something that's your stupid, scrawly drawing come to life. And then, you have to, if you're going to spend that kind of money there, you have to spend that much time there. So it really meant that that Ferrix was going to be a character in the show. And that became very helpful because Ferrix, what Cassian is going through is what Ferrix is going through. They've ignored everything, they're being reluctant, they don't care, they're paying attention to their own thing, and they're gradually radicalized, along the way. And when you realize you have those two pieces, you're like, oh my God. And it just builds from there. And I mean, you're looking at the wall of gloves, right? I mean, that was a very early idea, but that was really important for Luke and I because it's like, wow, we're going to be that specific. This is a union hall, and your father gave you the gloves, and you got a spot on that wall, and every spot matters, and let's be that kind of show. Let's understand every idea, everything that feels something to these characters. Any place we can, let's visually try to manifest that.
Well, I think that's what's brilliant about this particular location is the kind of scale of it, but also the simplicity and the beauty and the personal nature of moments as well. Look, in terms of kind of approaching that and the scale of something like that and the build of something like that and the planning of that, talk to me a little bit about where you start and
well, I should just
apart
add,
from the napkin.
It's not just me, there's like a massive art department behind me, but who are amazing, and some are in this audience actually. But I guess you start, it's also not helpful doing it through COVID. That was interesting. But we started with, I think there were over 30 sets in Ferrix. And it kind of organically grew, didn't it, Tony? Like we had X, Y, Z, and then you start thinking, if you start to look at it as a big composite set, as a town anyway, as you start to collage them together, they interact with each other and provide various opportunities to kind of become more than just a standalone set.
Yeah.
And going back to sort of what we started with, like the main goal here was to create places that you could get involved with and navigate through with the characters and not have to sort of stand back and explain it and be like, oh, look at our amazing concept art. It was about living it. And so everything had a lot of details, some of which you don't even see in the show, but it was important because we kept layering it in. I mean, it takes a huge amount of time to do it, time that we didn't have. So like through some of the accidents and mistakes became some of the more interesting things as well. Not all of it's actually sort of planned out from day dot. It's really a big process.
I think then as an audience as well, you navigate through your landscape then. You know where the characters, you kind of feel you're there with them as they're walking through the streets or they're running downstairs and stuff. And the way that you've created that as an audience, we're right there in it.
I mean, geography is really important for Tony as well. Like with
geography is just huge for me. But if you're going to be that rigorous with your geography for your action sequences and making sure the audience always knows where they are, except when they're supposed to be disoriented, which you can control if you've already put them in a place that they really. I mean, we also want to be emotionally accurate.
Yeah.
We don't want to have people's IQs go up and down or the things they need or feel change because we want them to. We want to set up a real thing. And so it's the same rigor that goes into the sets, that goes into the costumes, that goes into what Diego's doing. Everybody's trying to be extremely specific to the moment and make it real and know that that's the thing over there and that's the thing over there. And,
I think it's worth saying, there's a version of this that could have been very dystopian, right? Which is sort of an accidental journey we took at the beginning, just in the nature of what Star Wars, the baggage of what has come before in a way, and then trying to use it to work with what Tony's written. So separating what they do on the mesa, breaking down the ships from the town, was really important to find a community. So, and choice of materials and the brick and all of that kind of cemented that because it felt solid and it felt there is a place you can go after work and have a drink, and you can walk down here and go into someone's house, and it's not separated.
One thing that also, I think it's the long format that allowed all these layers to happen at the same time, Sometimes in movies it's different. There's a script, then someone comes, but here the editor is working and the composer while the designs are happening, while Tony's writing. Therefore, everything can be affected by each other's journey, you know, or ideas. And it's a different way of collaborating. And I don't think every writer could do it the way Tony does it, because he includes the ideas into the pod, you know? So he doesn't write till he knows how the set is gonna be. Therefore, when he's writing, Luke's work is already part of that writing, you know? He's writing with him in a way. And that changes the whole thing. Like the music is being composed before we go on set. The moment I'm playing the moment where the song is there, I'm listening to the actual song, the actual music, the piece you're gonna be listening to. It's like if we were capable to put the score on when we go on set. That doesn't happen often, and on this show it happened.
What was it like for you stepping onto that set for the first time?
It was great. It was great. The house, I remember I was there, it was first with Ben, and I was there and I said, like, look, if on those drawers we can put some stuff for me to go do, because it'd be really cool. And I went in the rehearsal and opened the drawers, and there was stuff there. And the stuff was useful, you know? I could bring it out, and it was still Star Wars universe, but it made sense. And it was like, oh shit, there's cooking stuff here.
Do you want eggs?
Cook.
Who wants eggs? Anyone want eggs?
That wasn't written, and it was not Luke. It was someone that works for Luke that pays attention to detail. When he talks about his team, it's a big team, and they're all giving you these elements you can play with. It's just so easy to believe that this galaxy far away exists. You know, it's so realistic. The approach was always, let's make it realistic. People have to believe this is happening, that there's a need for what you're doing and an intention behind everything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so amazing. It's why it feels so real when we're watching it. It's why we kind of feel like you can smell it and you're there and you're kind of dropped in. It's just got this amazing...
You know, I'll add to that too, because I think that one of the extraordinary things I've realized just being in this galaxy for a while is I'm constantly reminding people none of this exists. We're in
Don't say that.
Outer space. We're in the galaxy. We have to create exactly what you're saying every time. And these guys are really shortchanging themselves because, as you say, the level of detail that goes into creating every single thing you see on the screen, and you believe and feel that it's lived in and completely real. That is a gigantic art form. So bravo, guys.
Yeah. And places that we can all escape to, that's what you do for us. You take us to these places. So yeah, we're all eternally grateful for that. Can I talk specifically about that kind of end sequence in episode 3, if you don't mind, just for a minute, because that, I think, encompasses so many of you in terms of there's actually not that much dialogue, but there's a lot of story and narrative being told through situations that we find characters. This extraordinary piece with the chains and the things falling down that then leads into you guys escaping on the back of the speeder, and then the music, and it's just all the pieces come together, and it's just this extraordinary crescendo at the end of this episode. The editing in this is just phenomenal. Talk a little bit about the journey of the end of that episode and building up those different worlds and bringing it together. And
well, I mean, we had the two action sequences. The action sequence in the factory was we sort of really framed that really well. And the motorcycle, you know, I always think of it like when I was putting it together. It's sort of like his, you know, Cassian's life is sort of going by him as he's going to the ship, as he's going through. He's seeing all the places that he probably will never get to again, and that's kind of a poetry that worked for the whole thing, and the music and everything else, you know. So,
can I ask what those things were made of that were swinging around on a kind of slightly
the factory?
Yeah.
Those were
all real.
That last big shot where everything comes down. Those were, I mean, they weren't made of metal, but they were heavy, and they all came down. That wasn't a visual effects shot, really. That was practical.
That's a big scene for us because
we got out in the nick of time.
I think the applause should be for him because they didn't hit him.
Were they real?
He's still here.
This is the first time hearing it.
No, it did. Like I have to say that we rehearsed like theater. We got to the place when it was you were building it. Then we saw everything there hanging, and then we rehearsed the whole thing many times before we actually went to shoot it. And everything was mechanical, everything was happening, and we shot it in order. Therefore, we were like, whatever happened in the last take was the beginning of the next, and it actually happened the way you see it. We were reacting to real stuff, and acting with that is just like beautiful, because we're never in front of something that one day will become something else. It's ready, you know, it's ready, and it's going to be that. And as Luke is saying, if we run out of time, well, that thing is going to be there. That's what you're going to get, you know, and you as an actor are given the best tool you can have, which is you just have to react, you just have to live the moment. It was a beautiful scene to shoot, and a dangerous one too, yeah.
And that shot at the end, as you're kind of going across the fields, we saw a lovely still of that earlier, just the shot of the beautiful coloured fields, the textured fields as the bike goes across it, and kind of off, and it's in the water, just kind of spraying out underneath. It's like poetry. It's so beautiful.
There's someone who's not here who's another Mo and Leo in our visual effects department, and you know, I think in a lot of shows, right? I mean, the visual effects department comes in and delivers. You know, they deliver what somebody asked for.
Not at ILM.
No, but a lot of shows, but not for us. I mean, talk about another filmmaker. I mean, Moen worked on Rogue, and so there was prior, knew him from Rogue. But I mean, the work that he and TJ and their department did. I mean, you know, Luthen Space Battle, right? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that, because I was being a little facetious, but in reality, because ILM is a part of Lucasfilm, we have the benefit of these amazingly talented people inside the world of effects, who, much like everybody you're seeing sitting here, is incorporated into the creative process, and they begin a creative dialogue with Tony or our showrunners, and they're able to really make a gigantic contribution. As you can see, even as you guys all know, John Knoll, who's a perfect example of somebody who gets deeply involved in what the story is and servicing the narrative. That's what we're really fortunate to have, some incredible talent in Moen and TJ were absolutely that, because this was a very different kind of show where a lot of the effects needed to feel invisible. You needed to just believe it. And they weren't showy. There wasn't anything that would take you out of the story. And that's a real accomplishment. They did a spectacular job.
And they show you, they show you what's going to be there. You know, it's not like, oh, this will be solved later. You know what's going to be happening. You were talking about the speeder, which is the only. I mean, we were spoiled by then, and the speeder was shot in like a regular green screen, and there was like it was like going into the rodeo, you know, kind of like, because the speeder was there, everything was green, and wow. Stellan was behind me, you know. This was COVID times, so that hug felt delicious. You know? It was like, oh, here we are. But we were so spoiled, because it was the only moment where we turned and said, like, we didn't sign for this. Like, that really cool shot is not that cool, to be honest. It's us in the rodeo, like going like this. And someone blowing air, so the costumes like flow beautifully, you know. But it was the only moment, you know. And in fact, it was like kind of funny, because yes, of course, almost everything was real here, but flying on a scooter is impossible. Yeah.
Michael, you mentioned the costumes there, and for Stellan in particular, kind of having those two sides to one actor, was that kind of fun to play with as well? Because we see how much fun he has in, you know, kind of fluctuating between the two, particularly with the dress, when he's getting changed in the spaceship. Was that fun?
Yeah, I think across the board, something that really excited me about this project is that so many of the characters, they have sort of aliases, and they're hiding their true identity, whether it's it's Cassian or Mon Mothma or Lex or Dedra. Everyone has an agenda, and so they play with their clothes to sort of try on these different aliases. So yes, with Luthen we had this sort of what we call natural Luthen when he's off planet, and he's his sort of has that sort of quasi-military special forces kind of feel to him. And then the opposite to that, he puts his wig on, he becomes this incredibly urban, sophisticated dresser on Coruscant. So that was great working with Stellan to bring that about. But yeah, going back to the general costumes of Ferrix, we wanted the same sort of level of detail with those costumes. So we really, we didn't want it just to feel like the people in the background were crossing from one side of the screen to the other. We wanted to feel like they were coming from somewhere and going somewhere. You know, they all had a role, so we built that whole culture from the floor up. We divided them into grapplers and haulers and buyers and sellers, and we gave them all roles within the society. They had to all, it was sort of the most industrious and communal planet we go to, I think. So we really wanted to sort of forge these visual ties so it all felt like they were getting stuff done and working together, watching each other's backs. So yeah, we came up with, we created hundreds and hundreds of costumes for all of our background performers, custom hardware and fabrics and sturdy textiles to build all of these looks together. So yeah, hundreds of costumes, dozens of creatures. They're always fun to dress as well.
The Aldani people as well, the costumes you created for those were just absolutely gorgeous as well. And that's the beautiful thing, is almost when we arrive in different locations, it's a whole new sort of visceral world that we're introduced to through so many of these different departments. It's absolutely extraordinary. And I didn't just want to talk about Aldani because you shot it in Scotland, selfishly. Yes, the Scots, go on, there's 3 in the room. But having...
Well, there's more than 3.
Yeah. Yes, in the corner. Hi, Dad.
Colin, I know you're out there.
But talk to me about finding that location and why that was the right place to shoot.
That's a Luke call. Luke, how do we get the
Okay, so like Scotland's like our desert. We started with a few rules which were like, we need to feel like it's Star Wars, but we didn't want to do things just because they've been done before.
Yeah.
So we wanted something that really, where the landscape was a big part of that story and opening up at that point in the story. But the real reason we ended up in Scotland was because I think we got really interested in dams quite early on, before we knew what we were really doing, and how they were kind of like a blight on landscapes, and it just trying to find ways of showing Imperial action on planets that isn't just, you know, stormtroopers marching and things like this. So, and Richard Hill, our location manager, found this one up in Kurokan, which was just extraordinary because it looks like Darth Vader's mask, and it's just set in the most amazing kind of pocket. And then we just built it up from there, really. So that sort of, that environment became kind of key to what Aldani was. It became the planet language, and yeah. And
why don't you say where it is? Because I thought it was really interesting. I mean, maybe more people in this room know, but it was the first hydraulic dam built in the world. I didn't know that.
Wow.
And it was pretty amazing. We got to go inside and walk through the tunnels and really see every aspect of
it's like
how
a Bond villain lair.
Yeah.
Shot one scene in that tunnel.
Yeah.
There's one scene where they come in, it's in that tunnel.
Does when you find something like that, a real location, does that then affect the script in terms
Totally.
of...
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, and I've said this a million. I mean, I write after too many decades of writing action stuff. I can't really do it unless I can't do anything if I don't know where I really am. I really can't. If I know where I am and there's a platform and I know what's going on, I'm pretty quick. But if that's not there, I can't. So we get this dam and we get this place and we begin looking at it and where do they camp and where are they outside. So the script begins to immediately change. And then we was also during COVID. At one point there were supposed to be 3,000 people in that valley. Well, we couldn't do that.
Also because of money.
No, but we couldn't. No, but we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. So what? So something. Oh my God! Oh, and it looks like a crise for a couple days. And what are you going to do? And like, oh my God, the whole thing's upside down. We may not be able to do it all. But what comes out of that, oh my God, you know what? It's actually about the dead enders. It's actually much more sad and much more potent and much more valuable to the story to have them be the dead enders and the last time they're ever going to go there, and the fact that they're just the remnants of something that was beautiful and has been destroyed. That became, oh my God, well of course it has to be that way. And then the physical structure of the dam and how it works and how we do it. All of those things are all many, many conversations, and they all keep, design, build. We are designing, building, changing, designing, building, changing, designing, building, changing, with all these conversations that are happening with these people and all their minions. Yeah.
Diego, what did you make of Scotland?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yes.
I'm half Scottish.
Half Scottish.
Just my accent. My accent is not there, but I grew up in Mexico, but my mom and family were Scottish. See? And I did feel Scottish when I was there. I mean, it's so beautiful. It's so much water. It's life, everywhere. There is just water and green and beauty. It was perfect. And we were we were in London when the confinement was we had to stay at home, and suddenly we were dropped in Scotland and allowed to interact, and it was fabulous. It was such a beautiful experience, and very specific, because all the characters you meet there stay there. Most of the characters live on that block, and so it was like going and shooting another project, with the same world, universe, and team, but a story that just happens and begins and ends there,
Yeah.
Which was very special too.
I have to confess one thing
Kathy.
though. I became obsessed while I was there of trying to find Harry Coos.
Harry Coos.
You know what Harry Coos?
Harry Coos, yeah. I know. I'll tell you all later. Definitely. I'm glad you said water as well and not rain. There was so much water.
Is there a
not rain.
difference?
Yes, Tony, there is a very big difference. And Nicholas, when it comes to, the score around different lands and different environments, and this was so different, in terms of what we'd already seen within the show, does that affect, and how does it affect what you're writing musically?
Hugely. Every single new place, and it really felt at times like every episode we were going to so many new places, and that required whole new musical ideas. And specifically the Aldani, like the Eye Festival, for example. Those were things that we started thinking about early on. And one of the things I love about thinking about the place and thinking about the costumes and thinking about the culture, and then figuring out a lot of things later in post too. I love the sort of link with how that happens, where Tony and I created the sort of Eye Festival music. Tony wrote those lyrics, for example, and then we figured out how to choreograph that. But then it's actually in post that we figured out, maybe the reason that the melody that they're chanting is actually because perhaps the phenomenon of the eye itself has a sort of almost musical tone to it. And so then I then created a sound for the eye, actually, and then you sort of imagine back this almost many thousands of year backstory that perhaps they created the chant because they were hearing the eye, and so it actually worked. So these are the kinds of things that we sort of, you sort of, when you have this amount of time to explore things, you can live with these things in a way and come up with ideas like that. So the place and the story of each place mattered hugely to what the music was doing.
Can we talk about the design of the eye and the kind of how that was created and edited and put together as well? Because
You want to talk about the progress with that?
We were worried about the eye. I was putting this together, and I was like, I hope this eye is as good as everybody says it's going to be, because they would give us sort of like
look good on paper.
Look good on paper, and I went well through it, and I was just keeping my fingers crossed. And then one day, Moen and TJ sent us like the first shot, and it was just beautiful. It was just like this one little shot of it was you in the cockpit. You see and once I saw that, I knew we were going to be great. It was going to live up the entire sequence. Yeah, it's beautiful.
How'd you make it?
What's that?
How did you make it?
The sequence? Well, It's like any action scene. There's a lot of plate spinning. You have to. Tony touched on something earlier. When you're in this action sequence, you really have to pay attention to geography, and that was a really big deal. And taking attendance of your characters is another thing you have to do to keep people in the game. I don't know. There was probably a little more problem solving in 6 than there was in some of the other episodes, but you'll never know that.
Yeah, we got to keep some. Some things have got to be kept back. I get that. Can we move on to Narkina 5 and Coruscant? 2 very different landscapes, but
there's some Narkina 5 fans here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's got such a theatrical presence, that whole place and that whole being there. What were the conversations about what that was going to be and what it was going to look like and what the limitations were for the people within there?
I'll just say very quickly, and then I'll pass it. I brought a bunch of material. I'd worked with Luke for a couple months. I brought a huge amount of material. We went into a room with my brother Dan and Beau Willimon for 5 days in New York to try to beat out the holes and beat out the plot and figure out who would do what and beat out the whole story. Well, that's an intensively creative conversation. It goes very, very fast. One of the absent places on that was, he should go to prison. It'd be great if we could have a prison sequence, but we can't do a prison if we can't do a prison better than anybody ever did it or different than anybody ever did it. What would that be? And at some point somebody said electric floors. Who's in the room when that's happening? Who's in the room every day of that writer's thing is Luke. So our production designer is in the room while we are building the show. Zana Wallenberg, she's not here today, she is our just diva producer. She's just, I mean diva in the good way. And she's in the room. So he's watching the prison being built in front of him, and he's probably going back to his hotel room that night going like, oh my God, what the fuck are they doing? But
were you, Luke?
Well,
it was more of a case of we'll figure it out later.
Yeah, no, but I mean, so it starts right there. So we started that early, and man, we just worked it.
No, but the key concepts of the prison were established in that week. Was it just a week?
Yeah, it was a week.
And I think the big takeaway from that week was that the whole point that they were in there was like a labor camp, so they were the cheapest possible, most disposable thing, they being the people, more so than droids, and then everything stemmed from that. So like they're pushed through a factory, basically. That was the idea. So like they are the parts in the machine, and the day shift and the night shift, and then that kind of just informed the whole structure of the prison and the repetition and the way it stacked up. And then I don't know, I think it ended up being in the water just purely because I was looking.
No, but just stop at this picture for 1 second. If you just stop at this picture one section, and you think of what Michael Wilkinson's work to get that all done down there, all of Luke's work, all the stuff that's on there, all the art department, all the work that had to go into that, the amount of conversations and meetings and problem solving that go into that. How many tables should there be? How much should they do? What's the part like? How do we build the part? How many can we do? How many floors? I mean, that drawing represents a lot of talking.
When the reveal is made on what they're actually making as well, the noise that came out of my mouth and as a realization of what it was just like, I'm sure a lot of you were the same, of just going, oh my God, it's that. It's just all these joining of dots of things. It's so clever. Sorry, that wasn't a question. That was just me oversharing.
He's making the weapon that's going to kill him.
Oh my God, Michael, what was the core of coming up with these great costumes that we can see in this room today? Because they've made an impact. They have made a huge impact.
The concept was that they had been designed by the Empire to make the prisoners feel as dehumanized and as dispossessed, as disempowered as possible. So you have a white costume in a white environment. It's very sterile. It's disorientating. You sort of literally don't know where you are in the room. They were made out of like this very industrial fabric. It's sort of very disposable, like a papery sort of fabric. So it's kind of, you wear it once, it gets thrown away, you get put another one. Everyone looks exactly the same. And then we came up with this idea that the guards would need to sort of find them, so we added these flashes of orange graphics down the side of them that had a cool kind of, we leaned into the sort of 70s maxi graphic language of Star Wars. So yeah, that was the idea, just to sort of make them feel as disempowering and as unpleasant as possible. So well done, guys.
I mean, they actually looked quite comfortable. Like pajamas.
They could double as pajamas, I guess.
They were not comfortable, no. You know, they're not comfortable. And there's no way to sweat, or your sweat doesn't interact with, you know, it stays there. It's what Tony is saying is interesting, because it would have been very easy, and I'm sure you go like, okay, the character is going to go to prison, and then suddenly you're thinking of a film that happened in a prison that you love, and you'll do exactly what you've seen another actor do before. But here was impossible, because it's a prison where you're supposed to be healthy, where you're supposed to be clean, strong, to be capable of, you know, of building non-stop. There's a hope of you going out, you know. They provide you food, you know, specifically for you to, like, it's so interesting to play a prison like this one, you know. And it's, they're not gonna comment on it, but it's a lovely comment on the world we live in, you know. So it's those moments where you realize that science fiction serves to make a comment on the world you're part of.
It's a lovely opportunity to talk about the cast in this. You know, you mentioned at the beginning, Tony, and particularly when we're in this situation, watching you and Andy Serkis play with each other is just the most fantastic thing ever. And you get that opportunity with so many great partners in this. When you're kind of putting together this cast list, I mean, I don't know where or how you started as well. And I mean, Genevieve as well, phenomenal. You know, and Stella, and
Genevieve, we had to take Genevieve. We had no choice.
Denise as well is just.
Look, there's a variety of absent department heads here today, and Nina Gold and Martin Ware cast this show.
Yeah.
And when I first came on, I mean, it's like, oh, Nina Gold, so it's like, well, you know, and Nina Gold absolutely lived up to the hype from day one. She's just. And we did not know, I didn't know, Kathy certainly didn't know that we were going to have 190 speaking parts in the show by the time we got done with the first part. But, and at one point I said to Nina, are there any actors left over here? And but like their taste, their efficiency, and once you start getting the actors and you start realizing how great they are, and you start realizing you can write for them in a certain way, and you can write better and better and better, it's like, you know, it's like I said before, you know, if you're playing a toy piano, or someone brings out a Steinway Grand, well, these actors you have, all of a sudden you start writing, have, you know, there's this absolutely extraordinary talent pool over here, and they made me a better writer every day. It's like, well, you can do it, I mean, let's go for it. And so it's, that's just, they should be here. They're just as valuable as everybody else that's up here. So.
They're not saying one thing that they're not saying, and it has to do a lot with the work done before. You know, I mean, I know all these actors, and Rogue One has a lot to do with them joining, you know, and the second season will benefit from the first, and it's like, you know, when you commit to what you're doing, that's the best way to get people excited about being part. And I think that integrity you can see behind the work of Kathy, of Tony, and so when they come and say like, we're gonna keep doing this, you wanna join, actors are there immediately, you know.
And also simpatico taste. I mean, I don't think we've ever really disagreed on any casting choices. No. It's amazing. I mean, we used to play a derby game in the beginning, where we'd have like 5 or 6 choices, and almost like a derby game, and be like, well, who's gonna go, who's your first choice? And it was always like, I mean, we had it's incredible.
But the curation that you did with Nina up front was
yeah, but even still, I mean, it's pretty amazing, just even by luck of the draw. We really had there's never been a casting issue on anything.
Fiona Shaw saying...
Except Fiona Shaw.
Fiona Shaw saying, that's love. That just breaks me every time I watch that scene. And I think that's another thing that the show makes it so unique, is that it's the drama, it's the dramatic nature and the depth of the characters in the story, and simple moments to huge, big, you know, kind of set pieces and stuff, and everything in between. It just kind of gives you all of that. What is it like for you, Diego, when you have these opportunities to play with these, you know, this variety of different actors, whether it be Andy Serkis or Fiona or Stellan or...
It's you know, when you have a beautiful scene and a director, because we haven't talked about directors, you know, and that's some.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's 6 directors in these 2 parts. They're not here, but they bring a different perspective. They bring, and so far the directors we've had, they have the patience and the love for working with actors, you know. And actors in this show feel free, and that is beautiful to witness, you know, because you're never rushed. You never feel you have to get away to bringing what you love, but it's not appreciated, you know. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. There is time for us, and what happens in between the lines matters, you know?
Yeah.
We rehearse a lot. There is chance on set to repeat, and it's a beautiful feeling to be part of this show, because we know the strength of the show is on the nuances, on the different layers, you know, that a scene brings, and I mean, we're spoiled. We're spoiled. It's difficult to think about another set where we would be so free, you know?
Yeah. Is that the case as well when you're designing things like Mon Mothma's apartment, for example? And I think that that's another thing about what the design, both in terms of production design and costume design, does, is what we were talking about earlier, is that story design, and it kind of gives you glimpses into maybe the one side of a character or the 2 sides to a character, sort of thing as well. Do you mind talking a little bit about the kind of the creation of her environment? Because I find it really fascinating in terms of what it's not saying or what it is trying to say about her.
Yeah, I mean, so it starts with Coruscant generally, which is probably one of the most challenging things on this show, because it's been seen
so many times,
yeah, and in a way that maybe doesn't quite fit aesthetically with what we wanted to do. And then on top of that, thank you, Tony, you write so many domestic interiors that are not easy to translate visually into Star Wars. So I mean, it's actually one of the main reasons I decided to do it, because
Kyle's mum's house is
yeah. So Mons is an embassy, so it's not like her apartment, or it's not her house, it's not a personal. Is that a one-way out chant in the background?
Yeah. I think they actually want to say one way in because they want to come in, but you know, that's, yeah.
But so it was finding a world for her that she kind of has to, because it's not her home necessarily, she's inhabiting it because she is the senator at that point. So it kind of doubles as what Michael was saying before. Her duplicity is that there's no warmth here. It's an act, and Coruscant is sterile and inhuman as well. And I mean, as well as it all being very monochromatic, and so it's that kind of illusion of comfort and wealth, and yet she's clearly playing that as a facade. So we had a lot of conversations about this, to be honest, and it affects you more than me, but yeah.
That's for sure. I think, I mean, creating the costumes for Mon Mothma, I think, was one of the greatest pleasures of this project for me, just because she's such an interesting character. We haven't really seen her in detail in this chapter of her history before, and we talked about her clothes as a high-profile, high operating senator, as her armor, in a sense. That's her armor. That's the shell that she puts on between the public and her private self. And then we have those great opportunities when she's at home and she takes off the armor. You sort of get a sense of the layers. You peel back the layers of the onion and you sort of see the softness and the vulnerability of this character who's putting so much on the line, secretly funneling money into the fledgling Rebel Alliance. So Genevieve is an incredible, intelligent, strong, modern woman, and so to create her costumes was amazing.
And Nicholas, you talked about how you had to write elements of the score prior to filming for certain scenes and stuff, but then are you privy to any of the performances, and are you writing to any performances specifically at all?
Oh, absolutely. The post side of this is so immersive, and Tony and I are actually neighbors. He lives about 11 blocks from me in New York City, and so we spend so much time together, and I think that's really part of figuring a lot of this out is the close work that Tony and I were able to do, you know, sitting in the room, hearing the same things and watching the same things together, and you know, there are so many moments. We were just talking with Diego before about there's a moment, the moment when he finds out that his mother's dead, you know, and just even sculpting that little moment there, the idea of like, we didn't have the music come in right away. We actually wanted him to feel so alone that the music isn't even present and you're just hearing the wind kind of go by. And then we would sit there and look, you know, literally moving the music like frame by frame, sort of like, well, what if we started there, you know? And it's that kind of like detail that was going into it. So much of those moments were crafted much later on, but the theme is actually something that was initially written, you know, for the funeral. Actually, that's that Marva idea, but a totally new piece, a totally new, you know, cello kind of octet of that piece. So there was so much that went on in that, and there were new ideas that obviously I would be inspired by each episode of what to do. The last thing I would say is about Narkina 5, for example. That was an example where I had no idea that scope was really coming, actually. And when I saw the episode, I remember talking to Tony and just being like, I have to come up with a whole new set of themes now, actually, within the next 5 days to figure this out. So there was a constant set of new ideas and new things that had to be written later.
So we come full circle with the series back on Ferrex, and I mean, where do we talk about where we leave Cassian, and if you can give us any hints on where he's going?
Yeah, I mean, it took him a year, and he climbed up out of the ditch, and he went through an incredible number of life experiences and personal experiences, and he's been exposed to the rebellion, and he's tried to push it away, and he's tried to be a cynic, and he's tried to be a mercenary, and he's tried to pretend to do it, and he's led a mini rebellion of his own in a prison and seen what that felt like, and his mother is finally inspired him, and he's joined the rebellion. We're never going back on that. He's a committed member now. There's no more that debate. That internal debate is over. And we will now track him, and you know, the 20 or 30 so characters that we're continuing with, we will track them now over the next 4 years. It'll be, each block of 3 will be 1 year apart. So we'll do 3 episodes, we'll drop a year. When we come back, it'll be a year later. And it'll be over a short period of time, and then we'll drop a year, and we'll come back for a short period of time, we'll drop a year. And our final scene of the show, we've never made any secret about it, we've been saying it from the very first junket. The final scene of the show is him walking out to the ship to go to the Rings of Kaffrine. I mean, we're walking you into the film, so we're taking you right to that moment.
Oh my God!
And we're gonna let you know how he got there, what it cost him, the power of the journey that isn't entirely self-directed. There's a lot of circumstance that's brought him to this. There's something very special about where he ends up and what his role is, and we want to pay homage to that. And we will pay off and hopefully stick the landing on every emotional piece of all the characters that you care about. I mean, that's our goal.
Whew. Wowie. How's filming going? Filming going good?
Filming is going great.
It's going great. It's going great.
Fantastic. Can I say something? Because I mean, I want to thank you first. Yeah. We never get to share this, and we've been living a lot of these. Kathy, Tony, myself, a few of the other actors, but we never get to share this love with the people that actually do the show, you know? We always talk about them, but I love that Star Wars Celebration gives us the opportunity to actually interact and and say this loud and clear, that we are very lucky to be working with you and with your teams and with everyone that's not here, because this makes the ride worth it. You know, we're learning every day from the work these guys do, and